So I was scrolling through my YouTube feed yesterday and I stumbled across a very awesome video. It's from Graham Stevens. He's one of the YouTubers I follow and one of the few YouTubers I actually really look up to. This guy knows everything about finance, and he had this video about his personal debt and why he acquired that. He wanted to make the video because there's a ton of misconception about debt out there, and people don't always understand what is good debt, what is bad debt. So I wanted to make my own video about the personal debt that I've taken on and go into a little bit about that, because we live in a society that is just full of debt and there is a ton of misconception. People don't necessarily know if they should be financing something or if they should avoid it. There's not really a lot of good fundamentals out there that teach you when you should be taking on debt and when you should avoid it. Just about every time we look at buying something, we're presented with an option to either buy it up front or take on debt. And usually it's pitched in a way that sounds awesome. We can finance something with very little interest up front and not have to pay any money or any interest on this money for a while. It really sounds great. You can finance everything from that new mattress you want to buy to that new car you want to buy. Maybe you want to get started driving for Uber. Great, Uber will hook you up with a great financing deal on that Prius, and you can get stuck with these rates for just about ever. You're locked into them, and oh yeah, maybe your rates are going to get cut too as a driver. So now all of a sudden those payments become more difficult. A lot of these financing opportunities become debt traps if we're not smart about how we approach them. And it gets to the point where we just want to avoid all debt together. Personally, about 5 or 10 years ago, I told myself I was going to do that. I was going to take on zero debt because I didn't want to have interest payments and owing money to someone looming over my head. And then I started learning a couple rules about finance and about debt that really just changed my life and my perspective. And it's put me in a better financial position, and it's unlocked so many financial opportunities going forward for me. So I wanted to share those with you today. So let's start by taking a look at a couple examples of bad debt. Some very commonly known bad debt examples are payday loans and cash advances. It's also not a good idea to take out debt for something that's going to lose its value very quickly. So if you were thinking about financing that new pair of Gucci shoes that you really want but can't really afford, it's probably a bad idea. Student loans and home loans are generally considered to be good debt because you're taking out a loan to invest in something that's either going to generate income or increase in value over time. But there are definitely times when these good debt forms turn out to be bad debt. A student loan, for example, is not always good. If you take out a student loan and you are looking at majoring art, but you don't necessarily have a career in mind with that art degree, chances are you might not even get a job that's related to art. All of a sudden, that doesn't look like a very good investment. Home loans can be the same. If you take out a home loan and buy a house that is significantly overpriced, it might not increase in value. If your monthly mortgage payments on your home loan are too expensive every month and your monthly income generated is not enough to cover those, or it's not sustainable in a fashion that's going to be able to cover those long-term going forward, then this home loan might actually not be a great form of debt. With all the confusion out there with regards to what is good debt and what is bad debt, I found it very stressful when deciding if I wanted to take on debt, and a lot of times I just didn't know what to do, which is why I just fell back on that rule of avoiding debt. But I then found this new rule, which I now apply to all investments going forward, and it has helped me out tremendously when making decisions. It makes this process very easy for me. With that said, you can't apply it to all forms of debt. I wouldn't actually use it on student debt, but anytime I look at buying a real estate property, this is what I use. So the rule is very simple. One of the reasons why I really love it. All I do is I find my cap rate, which is my net operating income divided by the price, and I make sure that that rate is greater than the rate at which I am borrowing money. I'm going to drop a link down below to a spreadsheet that I use to calculate the net operating income on an investment property. It's super useful because there's quite a few details that go into that with regards to how much rental income you're generating, taxes paid, mortgage expenses paid, maintenance costs, all the little details you have to think about. And for me, I really simplify it based on this one simple thing. If I am taking on debt to acquire an income producing asset, is that income that's produced every month going to be greater than the money that's going out to pay interest on that debt? So here's how it looks for me in my personal example. As I mentioned earlier, I have about $390,000 in outstanding debt on my current first residence, and it's a 3-bedroom property. I rent out 2 of the rooms, and with that rental income, I'm not only covering my mortgage expenses, but I'm also cash flow positive on that. So for me, it makes sense to acquire that debt because the cost of that debt is less than the money produced every month. So not only am I going cash flow positive and producing income on this debt every month, but I've invested in an asset that I expect to appreciate over time. My house is located in the Seattle area, and I expect prices to appreciate. While they've gone up a lot in the last few years, they seem to be leveling off a little bit now, but I'm going to be holding this asset long term. And I bought this house. It's nearly identical to the neighbor's house next door to me, but I bought it for about $100,000 cheaper. So before I moved in and before I started renting it out, I spent a few $1,000s fixing it up to add about $100,000 in equity to this property. And that allows me to take advantage of another great real estate rule that is really the key to building wealth in America. If I had to say there is one way to build long-term wealth that is guaranteed in this country, it is investing in real estate and taking advantage of this one simple rule. And that is the fact that if you live in a property as your main residence, after 2 years of living in that property, you can sell it tax-free up to $250,000 at the individual level. And if you're married, you can take $500,000 of that profit tax-free. This is a huge incentive that was put in place to encourage people to buy houses. And it's really the way that people build and establish long-term wealth in this country. I have a lot of family friends that have done this for 10, 20, 30 years, just moving houses every few years, fixing them up, and really just letting the market grow and appreciate over that time period and generating tax-free income. It has put them in a place where they have established a great amount of wealth, not necessarily dependent on their primary form of income. It's really just a secondary income. I realize this is a ton of information to take in all at once. So if you have any questions, feel free and leave them down below, and I'll do my best to get to those and answer each one of those individually. This is a topic that I really wanted to touch on because financing is an easy way to get in trouble, and it's an easy way to lose a lot of money, but it's also a really great way to build wealth. And there aren't a lot of good topics on building wealth. Most people are going to try and get you to jump into an opportunity that might not be a proven way to make money, when in reality, there's a few proven ways to make money. These forms of building wealth have been proven over years and years and years, and there's so many ways to get distracted with easy opportunities that seem like a quick way to make a fast buck, when in reality, the people that have built long-term wealth and continue to do so are relying on these simple principles that are actually not that hard to put in place.